Well, hello. Welcome to my channel if you're new here. Thanks for clicking on this video. And if you are not new and you've come back, welcome back, bitch. Thanks for coming back. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you. One of my last videos actually got a request to do like a kind of show what I do to get this sound, like the speaking sound for my videos. So thank you for the person that requested that. So I kind of just wanted to go through, first of all, my setup as far as hardware, and then after that getting into any sort of plugins that I use to get this sound that you're hearing right now. So yeah, I appreciate it. Let's this one's going to be kind of short, but we're going to get into the details of, you know, the stuff I use. So let's get into it. First of all, I'm using the Shure SM7B, so a very classic and really good mic for podcasting and or speaking related things. Also good for metal vocals as well. So yes, Shure SM7B, you can't go wrong with it. I'm using a Mogami cable. This cable, the one that I have right now, is pretty short just because I'm not taking this mic anywhere far away from my interface, so the cable itself is pretty short. I'm not gonna lie, the Mogami cables are expensive, but they're super worth it. This is the only cable so far that has like really mitigated as much like noise as possible, so that's nice. And then for my interface, I'm using the Arturia Mini Fuse 4. I'm just using the left input. There's two inputs on here. I have the gain turned up a bit. Because this is a dynamic microphone, it needs the gain to be turned up, but you do not need phantom power, so keep that in mind. And as far as what I'm using for my DAW, I use Studio One Pro. I swear by it personally. I think Studio One Pro, if you've been here before, I think is underrated, and I've said that. But yeah, so I'm using Studio One Pro, and that's pretty much how, as far as it goes with basic recording equipment for this setup when I'm speaking. Let's get into my effects chains now. This is the chain that I use on the track itself. So first of all, just starting with an EQ. I use the Pro EQ. This is a stock plugin with Studio One, so super good graphic EQ. It's my favorite one. I mean, I've tried a bunch of other graphic EQs, and like this one is the best one to me. Overall, I am really just trying to get rid of some of that boominess in like the mid-low frequencies and getting rid of that, like rolling off all of the low end, because my voice is not that low. Frankly, no human voice is as low as 100 hertz. But so first of all, what I'm doing is taking 80 hertz off, anything below that, right? So, which is kind of, I don't think it's necessarily aggressive for vocals, because you can do the 50 or 20 as well, but I think 80 is perfectly fine, especially because I'm just using my speaking voice, so it's nothing crazy. And then I have this low cut as well, so it's going even further than the 80 hertz, which is going to be the 191. I set it at 191. I was messing around with it a little. I think and it's only, the curve is not that aggressive as far as how much it rolls off. So it sounds fine to me. I really don't have that low of a voice, so I really don't need anything below 100 hertz, even maybe 150, 200. Otherwise it'll just sound boomy. And then the last one that I'm using is this low frequency curve. I have it set at 356 hertz specifically. I just found that this frequency tends to be where my voice sounds really like boxy and boomy with this mic and like in this space. So I took off a little less than 5 decibels. So negative 4.6. This is a frequency. And then this just tells you how aggressive this curve is, if you want it to be a skinnier curve or if you want it to be like a wider curve. So I have it at 1.78, but as you can adjust it to make it skinnier, a little wider to make it less aggressive. But mine, if you're using the same EQ for as I am is set at 1.78. And then the rest of the frequency points I didn't even touch. I really was just using this EQ to get rid of all of that low end crap that I don't need and just makes it sound muddier. So, okay. So then I have a gate on my effects chain next. This is just to get rid of any extra noise, any extra like excessive breathy sounds, and like, yeah, it's not a crazy gate. It's sort of, I think it's always good to have a gate, especially if you're just doing a lot of talking, because there can always be extra noise and crap. So for the threshold, I set it at negative 16.9. The reduction range is negative 1.12 decibels, which is not a lot. It's not a ton at all. So again, it's just to help a little bit, clean the vocals up a little bit. The envelope, okay, the attack is 2.55 milliseconds, so the attack is really pretty fast. Hold is 5.64 milliseconds, and then the release is 10 milliseconds. So it's all pretty quick, but it just helps clean up the noise a bit. This is also a stock plugin for Persona Studio One. Last one is the compressor. This one is also a stock Studio One plugin, which I've gotten so used to using them that I prefer them now because I think they work well as well. So it's easy to use. So as far as this compressor goes, now none of it is. I'm not really showing what it's going to look like with my like post. Because I do turn up the gain a little bit more after I'm done recording the vocals, and then you'll see that there's going to be more reduction. Right now there's not, because I'm recording live as I'm showing you this stuff. But usually the reduction here would be, I try to do max like 3 decibels. I'm not trying to compress my voice like crazy, but it's just more to control the dynamic range of my voice. It's not as crazy as it would be if I were singing, but there's still certainly a lot of dynamic range when it comes to the voice in general. So I just like to even that out a little bit, so it's easier to hear when you're watching the video. So the ratio is, I put it at 5, which is more aggressive than I would usually do, especially for like singing per se. Like as far as my vocals, I put it at like 3 for the ratio, but I think 5 is okay for speaking. The knee is 10.08. It's not an aggressive knee, really. I have the threshold at negative 10, and the threshold basically controls where your voice will start being compressed. So if you notice, if I keep pulling the threshold down, it compresses my voice more and more and more and more. But I had it at negative 10 about. So again, it's not aggressive at all. It's just to get a couple decibels to really hone the extremes in as far as dynamics. The attack is 6 milliseconds. The release is 50 milliseconds. They're both pretty middle of the way speeds. I'm not trying to make this compression crazy or pumping like you would do in certain genres and stuff like that. So, and then I have a little bit of makeup gain here, which looks odd because this one is higher than this one. You want to match the level that it was before. Typically, match the level that it was previously with the new level after compressing. But again, I'm going to turn up the gain a little after I finish recording this, so it'll be even when the compressor is actually working through the final recorded vocal. Yeah, and then the mix is 100%. So that's a pretty simple effects chain for my vocals on that actual track. And then I add a couple more things on the master fader just to add a little bit. So the saturation knob I use is the soft tube saturation knob. I set it to keep high, so to be more in the higher frequencies, because I I think adding saturation to the lower frequencies when it comes to like a speaking sort of thing is kind of pointless, especially because I was taking away a lot of the low frequencies in the EQing. So keeping it high just to add a little bit of color, a little bit more warmth in my voice, a teeny bit. Like it's not a lot. Yes, saturation 0.7. It's not a ton. It's not clipping either. So it's just there to be a little bit of warmth to my voice, and that's it. And then the final thing is the limiter is I usually add the limiter and just it helps not only kind of help even the dynamic range a little bit more after the compressor, but it also helps make my voice be able to be loud enough over the music videos that I react to specifically, mostly because those are super loud, and obviously I can turn those tracks down, which I do, but it is nice to make sure my voice is still able to compete volume-wise with those videos instead of having to mess around with both volumes a ton, as you know, so it just helps a little bit bring up my voice. The limiter also kind of adds that little bit of like a radio voice feel. The radio speakers are always, their voices are super compressed and stuff, and they kind of, you get that sort of compressed sound a little bit with the limiter. So I kind of like that sound a little bit, and I think people are used to it because of the radio. So I think it's nice to have a little bit more volume, so that's why I add the limiter on the master as well. Yeah, I have the gain at 3 decibels, the ceiling at negative 0.2. I tend to go a little bit farther on the ceiling, so there's no chance that it'll clip. I just think it's safer for personally. And the threshold is negative 0.8. Again, the threshold is not crazy at all. And then the release is 180 milliseconds, which is pretty like middle of the way release time. All of the effects that I use are really it's not to change my voice at all. It's still my speaking voice, but it's more to just clean things up in the low end and the dynamic range. It's really just to clean and polish a teeny bit to really just make it sound nicer and cleaner. All of these plugins except one are PreSonus Studio One stock plugins. The only one that's not is the soft tube saturation knob, which is also free. So that's cool, So if you want another saturation plugin to have, I would definitely recommend the soft tube one. It's really, really easy to use and sounds good. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought of this. I hope you enjoyed it, especially if you want to start getting into like podcasting or just like want to know how to record speaking vocals and have like a simple effects chain on your voice. Then I'd say, let me know what you thought. And if you have any questions about any of the stuff that I talked about, don't hesitate to ask in the comments, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. So, yes. And if anybody else has any other requests as far as my setup or anything that I use, feel free to throw it my way and I'll try to, do my best to try and get to it. But yeah, I will see you guys this weekend. Thank you for watching again. I hope you have a good rest of your week.